Okay, welcome. How is everyone? You enjoying day 3 of the conference? I hope so. Excellent. Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to select to be at this session. I'm really excited to spend the next 30 minutes with you discussing on how to use change management methodology to drive development priorities. So to ensure your expectations are set about what we're going to discuss during this session, I've included the session description, a little bit of an eye chart here. My hope is at the conclusion of this session, you'll have a greater understanding of the role of change management in driving your development priorities. And being a former educator, I do want to share that I will look to you for a bit of audience participation. So be on notice. My name is Jennifer Matthews, and I am the Change Management and Adoption Practice Lead for Acumen Solutions, a global strategic partner of Salesforce based in the Washington, D.C. area. I'm sure, like yours, my professional and personal experiences have informed where I am today in my career. Change management is a passion for me because I've been able to witness the impact when it's present in an organization or a project, and I've also seen the impact of when it's absent. In the world we live in, change is a constant, and change is needed to evolve. Ultimately, the way that we manage change is critical in helping organizations from projects to people to be successful. As I speak today, I do so from the lens of my different experiences in working with customers and helping them to implement new technologies or processes and essentially embrace a change. So here's our roadmap for today's session. We'll be discussing what is change management. I'll then provide an overview of a change management methodology. We'll discuss applying change management methodology to drive development priorities through a case study. And then lastly, I'll identify some key takeaways. So what is change management? I think each of you may think of something different when you hear the words change management. So for the next few minutes, what I'd like to do is develop a common understanding. To begin to understand the role of change management in driving development priorities, I'd like to pose a question to you. Why do we innovate? Please feel free to raise your hand and share your thoughts. And I'm going to have one of my colleagues, Suni, come around to see what you have to say. So why do we innovate?
I think that we innovate to stay current with the customer demand. So all of us have customers who are getting more and more savvy, and if we don't advance or know what they want before they do, we won't be able to keep up.
Thank you for that. Any other ideas? Great.
Stay relevant.
Stay relevant.
And simplification. Simplification.
And simplification. Over here.
To provide value to our users, which will ultimately increase revenue.
Excellent. Providing values to users, ultimately increasing their satisfaction. Anyone else from over here? Thank you for helping my colleague get some exercise today, running back and forth. I like that. Let's keep her going. Keep her going.
To have a competitive edge.
Say that one more time.
To have a competitive edge.
To have a competitive edge or a competitive advantage. All right. Any last thoughts about why we innovate? Right here up front.
Make things easier for ourselves.
Make things easier for ourselves. And we'll give a final answer here. Terrific. Or two. Two's good. We're good.
To actually be better than ourselves so our customers can see that we're evolving and we are actually our competitor.
Yes. Oh, so we are our own competitor. So to actually help us be better than ourselves, to aspire for more. Yes.
To improve the quality of life.
To improve the quality of life. So obviously Salesforce being Salesforce and having such a commitment to really looking at how we all can embrace how we might improve society over time with different items, you all came up with a lot of great answers. Now, on the most fundamental level, I think many of you called some of these things out. We innovate to solve problems improve the user or consumer experience, create efficiencies, or achieve goals. So perhaps innovation lies in increasing sales and customers or increasing revenue. Maybe you're looking to obtain better analytics. We heard about the Einstein product yesterday in the keynote. Improving customer service, or one of you already mentioned this, staying relevant and creating the next big idea in the industry. Take for a moment to reflect on the development projects on which you've worked. Consider, to what degree is your project success on people adopting? So what is the dependency on people using your system? I'm going to ask you 2 questions, so let me see a show of hands based on your answers. Raise your hand if you have developed or you are developing a system where people would use the system. I know that seems like a common sense question, right? Raise your hand if you're developing a system that does not require people to operate the system or use the system in some manner. Maybe it's purely automation in the back end. So we do have a couple, but I don't know if you all kind of observed, but obviously most of the hands went up for the first question. So the true measure of most project success is not actually go live. It's whether the system or technology that has been built is being adopted and effectively used by the users. So take a look, if you would, at being this is a developer track audience. I'm sure you're very familiar with the software development lifecycle. So you'll see up here design, build, validate, deploy, and then also support. And once a technology is developed and it's made available to use, we hope that people use it. But availability does not necessarily lead to adoption. It doesn't necessarily lead to people using that system effectively. If you build it, how can you ensure people will become effective users of your system or technology? Here we have a developer's challenge. Developing the most amazing thing is only as good as the end user adopting. Take, for example, a Rube Goldberg invention. Is anybody familiar with who Rube Goldberg is? I'm getting some nods. So he's a well-known cartoonist who was best known for illustrating inventions that were overly complex to accomplish a certain task. I'm going to go ahead and show you one of those. So this is his self-operating napkin machine. Whoop. Which is not displaying. Can you flip to that, or no?
It's an extended desktop, so if you pull it over to the other screen.
Okay. Sorry about this. That's okay. We can move forward. Yeah, no worries. We did test the technology, however, as you can see. Okay, so envision this self-operating napkin machine is this contraption where it's overly complex. This man is sitting at a table. He has this arms and levers going back and forth in order to just wipe this individual's face. Now, this invention does serve a purpose, but would it ever be adopted by consumers? So when we think about how to ensure adoption and how to make sure that people are doing what they need to be doing effectively, you need to solve an actual business need with what you design. Change management is designed to manage the people side of change. And using a change management methodology ensures that people, the users on the system, remain at the forefront of decision making from development all the way through deployment. So let's explore this a bit further. So when we take a look at this quote that you see here on the slide, or this statistic, ProSci, a global leader in the best practices research around change management, found that two similar projects could have excellent technical solutions. They could have excellent project management, but one would successfully meet project objectives while the other would fail. And the secret ingredient to project success was change management, which addresses the people side of change. Through their research with organizations in a variety of industries, probably many of which would be to what you would belong, those industries, the research found that projects were 6 times more likely to meet objectives when there was effective change management. So as you can see from here, with effective change management, there's a greater likelihood that project objectives are met, projects finish on time and budget, and there's a return on investment, and that return on investment is realized. You all indicated when I asked for you to show of hands of your own experiences that most technology is designed to be used by people to achieve certain outcomes, certain business outcomes. And those people need to be motivated to use that new tool or system and change the way that they work. When people adopt and effectively use a system, business outcomes can be realized. So let's take a look at what change management may look like on a project. Some of what you see on this slide may look familiar to you. Change management and project management, they have distinct areas of focus, processes, and tools. Taking a look at project management, that focuses on the technical side of moving from the current state to the future state. And you all being a developer track audience, or many of you perhaps being on the side of IT, understand that these are certain tools or practices you may do during project management. Change management focuses on the people side of moving from the current state to the future state. However, when both of these efforts are on a project and they're integrated and coordinated through project plans, it ensures that stakeholders and end users are very engaged in all aspects of the software development lifecycle. This leads to the development team, to you all as developers, to build a system that truly meets business needs and will be adopted by users. So what I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about the change management methodology. I'm sure you all have experience with project management methodology like Agile and Waterfall. Change management also uses methodologies, and one that is widely used by organizations such as mine is ProSci's ADKAR methodology. ADKAR serves as a framework to guide people through change. It consists of change management activities which lead to greater adoption and effective usage of system. So ADKAR stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. Have any of you heard of ADKAR before? Show of hands. Okay, we have a couple people. Excellent. As we walk through our ladder to adoption, I'll explain a little bit about each of these elements of ADKAR. So the first element, let me go ahead and do my clicker here again. Yep, and my clicker looks like it might have stopped working. Oh, there we go. So the first element of the ADKAR framework is awareness. People being able to be aware of the need for change, understanding why it's happening. And this focuses on alignment among leadership and project objectives and communication as well. So I know that many of you as developers may not always be fully engaged as to the executive decisions about why something may be happening. You really might be delivering on the actual system itself. But it's very important that there is that alignment and that it's communicated to the people who will be using the good work that you do. So once people are aware of project objectives and this has been communicated, we focus on desire. And so that's looking at activities that help to develop what we call the WIFM, or what's in it for me. helping people to understand why they would want to participate in that change. Why would they ultimately want to be using the system that you're developing? Next comes knowledge. Through communication and resources, people have knowledge on how to change. Ability focuses on providing training and resources so that people can actually develop the skills and the necessary competencies to be using the technology effectively. And then lastly, but certainly not least, there's reinforcement. So taking a look at reinforcement, this is really focusing on accountability and coaching, making sure that people understand how they're using their job or using the system, how it might be impacting their job, and essentially making sure that that change sticks. So let's take a look at the ADKAR framework and how it could be applied. In this particular example of which I will speak, Company X has decided to implement a new CRM and to centralize leads and pipeline management across the 6 product lines that they have. So we have the first step of awareness. Company X has agreed that a new CRM is needed, again, to be able to manage their sales pipeline across products. They begin to communicate that a new CRM is going to be designed to help the sales team do their jobs more effectively. They communicate strategic goals, and they also communicate estimated timelines for that system to be up and running. In step 2, we look at desire, how sales leadership and sales representatives can understand how a new CRM will benefit them because it's going to help them sell more products. They'll have better visibility into how to cross-sell or upsell customers. We then also take a look at knowledge, our third step in the framework. And through communications and demonstrations, sales leadership and sales representatives begin to understand how this change in this new CRM will be impacting them in a positive way. Next, we have ability. Sales leadership and sales representatives are trained on how to use the new CRM. And then we have reinforcement. Sales management provides recognition to those individuals who are using the system effectively, and then also provides support or reinforcement to those who might need additional assistance. So now let's apply the ADKAR methodology to system design and development. As I do this, I'll share on how it's been used at a project for AARP, a large nonprofit organization who has implemented the Sales Cloud and Community Cloud in partnership with Acumen Solutions. AARP's volunteer portal, that's what they've called their system, the merging of the Sales Cloud and the Community Cloud, as well as the ecosystem of a number of different integrations that they have. It's a system that currently supports 6 of AARP's volunteer programs with thousands of volunteer users. The average age of the volunteer user is 72. Think about that. Someone who is 72 years old asking to use a new technology, perhaps they don't even have an email address yet. In addition, there are hundreds of staff users who also are using the volunteer portal. The platform supports all aspects of the volunteer life cycle, from recruiting to onboarding to training to volunteer work to offboarding. And using ADKAR, the change management methodology, was integral to ensuring that what was developed would be adopted by users. It ensures that we hit the target. Keep in mind that change management and project management should have an integrated approach so that the project team can leverage a wealth of opportunities to engage with stakeholders and ensure that end users are helping to inform the development priorities. So taking a look at our first step of applying the ADKAR methodology to driving development priorities, the question with awareness, is there alignment on the vision? As we take a look at this, we do things like defining that there's a concise executive vision, that there's clarity, that we know what is changing, we know how that change will impact the business. When we think about how we accomplish that, we are really looking at being able to establish and align business objectives and adoption metrics. So thinking about those things prior to development really starting, we engage stakeholders who will use the system. and we communicate the vision to the users. Now, as I apply this back to AARP and their volunteer portal, once business objectives with this platform have been defined, there were certain tenets to be followed, such as developing functionality that would be provided. It needed to be an enterprise-wide view of volunteer-related activities, as well as evolving the user experience in order to attract new volunteers or to retain the existing volunteers. As requirements were gathered from each of these 6 different volunteer programs, a balance sometimes had to be struck. In wanting to ensure that user adoption was going to occur by developing functionality as relevant and specific to those individual 6 programs, there were instances where some features had to maintain an enterprise-wide design. So communicating this vision at the outset was very important in order to manage expectations and ensure that the stakeholder volunteer programs understood how and why certain design decisions would be made. Taking a look at the next element of the ADKAR framework, desire. How do you determine what should be developed or built? So again, as we explore this, we take a look at defining what technology development decisions would actually drive system adoption. We focus development efforts on improving data quality or their user experience and adoption. And then we also need to assess those development strategies that center around the users of the technology, again, to ensure that adoption. So as I talk back again to our AARP example, we engaged with different stakeholders and representatives from the volunteer programs using different channels. And through that, we were able to understand key business processes that were used with a high degree of frequency, such as expense reimbursements. Being reimbursed quickly is a huge motivator for volunteers to learn and use the system. Keep in mind, they're not employees, so they're not mandated to have to use a system per se. That being said, they do work where they have expenses, and they like to make sure that they are paid accordingly for that. So it was critical that the workflow for this functionality be as intuitive as possible, and that would give volunteers, users, because I mentioned that the average age is 72, so they're going to have varying degrees of comfort with technology in general. In addition, through change management activities, we also established a champion network who would become the earlier adopters of the system and could provide ongoing input into the development team around ease of use. And they could also build excitement with other users and talking about functionality like self-service functionality of expense reimbursements. How did we achieve this? Well, we, as I mentioned, conducted stakeholder analysis and interviews and surveys to understand the pain points and also relate them to business objectives. And again, we established that champion network, which is a super user on the system to provide input. As we take a look at the next element of the ADKAR methodology in managing change, we look at knowledge. So why are some tools or features better adopted than others? In order to do that, we need to really look at the driving factor for the development of those features, so process improvements, and being able to prioritize what process improvements should really be the go-forward approach or the future state. We need to take a look at what could possibly be automated in the system, and if there are any manual efforts that currently exist with technologies, could those be eliminated to some degree in order to make people's work more effective? So how did we approach that? We met with stakeholders, the volunteer programs, to outline business processes that inform the requirements. And then we outlined a day in the life of the groups, the user groups, to truly understand if the development decisions we were making would better the work that they need to do and how that would impact their daily work. So by continuing to use these channels to engage with stakeholders from volunteer programs, we were able to understand the range of business processes that would need to be enabled through the system. And this helped to guide requirements discussions, as I mentioned. There were business processes like associating expenses with federal grants, which led to decisions around expense reimbursement and the workflow within the system and how that would be defined. In this particular situation, what we discovered was each program did need to customize to some degree the expense reimbursement functionality in order for each volunteer program to have compliance. A one-size-fits-all development decision in this particular situation for expense reimbursements would have led to an underutilized tool where volunteers would have circumvented the system and gone outside the system and simply continued to submit expenses through paper-based means. As we look to ability, does the technology enable people to do their jobs more effectively? And as we look to do this or explore this, we're really defining and measuring the effectiveness of tools and decisions before and after the technology has been implemented. Again, how do we accomplish this? We return back looking to our champions to be able to give them demonstrations or informal training sessions throughout the development to build their knowledge of the system, to make sure that they can provide feedback. And during that feedback, we might have discovered features that delighted them, or we may have discovered gaps that could have been identified or perhaps made their user experience more challenging. And so we identified areas that could be improved as well. So as we worked with the different volunteer groups and their champions and equipping them with system knowledge through these informal training sessions, we gained invaluable feedback, and that helped to redirect some of our development priorities or efforts. And in addition, it helped us to truly understand that if there was a gap, we had time to close that gap before user testing or before go live. And lastly, we have reinforcement. So to what degree does user feedback and adoption influence your development roadmap? As we think about this, we look at continuing that software development lifecycle by engaging with stakeholders. And along with that, again, we prioritize development on core platform technologies, or maybe taking a look at mobile strategies or identity and security tactics as well. I'm excited to say that actually today, October 6th, marks 1 year of go live, or since go live of the AARP's volunteer portal system. There are now over 28,000 users, again, average age 72, using that system, and the number is increasing. Through established governance processes from enhancements and bug fixes that help to incorporate into the prioritization process, the volunteer programs continue to offer input to the development team, and that shapes the product roadmap. Using the ad card change management methodology ensures that we continue to hit the target. So, as we think about key takeaways before we enter our Q&A session, I wanted to share some of these items. And for those of you who are already implementing best practices to inform development priorities, this checklist will serve as a reminder. For others, this checklist may give you some food for thought or a few key actions that you can take to drive the approach to your development. Let's start with the what, this first item. So really understanding the different ways users will interact with the system. And how can that really be accomplished? Developers absolutely can be at the table when they're hearing discussions directly from end users. So leverage those multiple channels to engage with stakeholders and the product owner as well. Also consider the technical complexity and determine what can be accomplished within a given time frame. People can ask for the world, but we know that in development, you sometimes have to really help them focus. So allow adequate time for development, including functional checkpoints and gathering considerations for users. Another key takeaway, validate what has been developed satisfies your user needs. And how do we accomplish that? By taking a look and reviewing those requirements and acceptance criteria with stakeholders through those functional checkpoints or demonstrations. And then lastly, really consider what factors may influence your development approach. All of us have different comfort levels, perhaps, with the way we approach projects or development. So evaluate your approach to development to determine if you're designing in the best interest of adoption. All right, so we have a few minutes for questions before we conclude. Does anybody have questions around using change management methodology and how that does inform software priorities? Anything that I could answer for you? No? Okay. Do any of you currently use change management as part of your methodologies when you do develop? Show of hands. We have kind of shaky hands, some of you do. And hopefully you do see that as a result of doing that, what you've built actually will be adopted. Well, for those of you who would like to discuss change management further, or if you want to discuss any other transformation initiative, I invite you to visit the Acumen Solutions booth, which is number 813 in Moscone South. And I'd like to thank you so much for your time today. Enjoy the remainder of Dreamforce 16.